You remember when people really thought Disney acquired Fox Studios solely so that they could put the X-Men into the MCU? If the 71 billion price tag wasn't enough to convince you otherwise, then the fact it's been 7 years since they acquired the property and we've yet to see the proper introduction of the mutants into the MCU is all the proof you need. Today we're gonna run through the 5 directors who could be a great fit to direct the first X-Men film, including one that I believe will be an absolute slam dunk. The first name I would suggest to direct the MCU's first X-Men film is director Luca Guadagnino. Though the vast majority of his films, whether it's Call Me By Your Name or his remake of Dario Argento's Suspiria, were largely inaccessible, slowly paced films, his recent work on Challengers suggests that Luca is capable of delivering a more accessible, crowd-pleasing film without sacrificing on his greatest quality as a director: his ability to observe human behavior and desires in interesting and compelling ways. The visual skill that he showcased in his directing of the tennis sequences, such as the decision to turn the camera into the tennis ball and have the players knock it back and forth across the net, suggests exciting potential for Guadagnino as an action director. And it would be interesting to see how he would bring to life the mutant powers in equally creative ways. Most importantly, I think Guadagnino would engage in the essence of the mutants incredibly well. X-Men has always been a story about the outsider, something which Luca has a lot of experience in portraying.
I've been always drawn by them. People who can be considered utterly different.
In Bones and All, he used cannibalism as a metaphor for being an outsider on the fringes of society. It's easy to imagine he would be able to utilize the power of the mutants in an equally allegorical way. Just think about what he could do with a character like Rogue, a character who can kill someone just by touching them. Unlike some of the other names on this list, Guadagnino is not a writer-director, and considering the X-Men movie has already found its writer and Hunger Games scribe Michael Leslie, this wouldn't be an issue, but Guadagnino is still an auteur, and in an interview with The Independent, he made it pretty clear that he would require full creative control to direct a superhero movie, saying, "If Toby Emmerich of Warner Bros. Would call me and say, 'Luca, we want you to make a DC character movie and you can do whatever you want, you would have complete creative control,' then of course I would be responsible and share ideas with them, but I would need complete control of what is made because then I can perform better." Marvel isn't synonymous with full creative control, but in a time where their star is waning, it would be a great idea for them to put their trust in an auteur director with a strong vision who could help rejuvenate the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Lastly, the X-Men property has a history of engaging with LGBT themes, featuring LGBT characters such as Mystique, Shatterstar, Courier, Psylocke, and Anole. And if the animated series could feature the legacy virus and allegory for AIDS, it's interesting to imagine how Luca could incorporate his usual LGBT themes into the fabric of X-Men. My second suggestion for who could direct the MCU's X-Men, well, it's actually 2 names, and that's Anthony and Joe Russo, otherwise known as the Russo brothers. Not only did the Russos direct arguably the best MCU film in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, it's their work on Endgame, Civil War, and Infinity War which showcased their second-to-none ability in juggling huge ensemble casts, which will be a necessity for directing an ensemble-based film such as X-Men. That said, their track record outside the MCU has been far from perfect, with middling films such as Cherry, The Grey Man, and You, Me, and Dupree. What these films suggest is that the Russo brothers are only as good as the team surrounding them. And considering the dwindling quality of the MCU, I'm not confident enough in the staff at Marvel to elevate their talent in the way they would need to do. So while I would be happy to hear their names announced in a hypothetical Hollywood Reporter announcement, the MCU is better off looking towards some fresh blood. My number 3rd suggestion is far from an original name, in that you've probably seen 10 different AI videos of what would it look like if this person directed the X-Men, and that's Wes Anderson. I know it's a radical idea, but I promise if you bear with me, I'll convince you that it isn't an entirely terrible one. Not only is Wes Anderson great at juggling ensemble casts, he is especially experienced in a certain type of cast, and that's the dysfunctional family, in movies such as The Darjeeling Limited and The Royal Tenenbaums. If he could bring that same dysfunctional quality to the mutant, he could craft an X-Men film with a dynamic that is just as heartfelt as it is dysfunctional. Being one of the most visually distinct Hollywood directors, Wes could have a lot of fun with the varied power of the mutants, but I'm worried he would have too much fun. Though Eternals showed Marvel's willingness to venture outside the realm of their usual homogenized visual style for something more practical, Anderson's distinct, symmetrical, meticulous visual style feels like too much of a commitment for Marvel, even if Anderson was willing to make the leap. Which brings us to a slightly more realistic fourth option, and that's Jordan Peele. Recent reports indicated that Peele met with Marvel to direct one of their films, and while we don't know exactly which IP he met to discuss, I think he would be a great fit for X-Men. X-Men has always been a strong metaphor for xenophobia, particularly racial injustice. Not only have Professor X and Magneto often been compared to MLK and Malcolm X in their respective approaches of achieving prosperity for their people, the 1980s featured a storyline in which the mutants were enslaved and segregated in the fictional state of Genosha, mirroring the apartheid in South Africa. Marvel Comics have also featured imagery of mutants being lynched, mirroring the horrific treatment of African Americans pre the Civil Rights Movement. And the inclusion of hate groups such as the Church of Humanity, which specifically target mutants, are undoubtedly reminiscent of the KKK. For a director such as Peele, who has used all three of his films to comment on race relations and xenophobia, this will be a great thematic fit. Because Magneto's origin story is traditionally associated with the Holocaust, which occurred in the 1940s, it's been suggested that this be adapted to the Rwandan genocide for timeline reasons. And with Peele making it clear that he wants to focus on black characters, he could even change Magneto's race. With that said, Peele has made it pretty clear that he wants to focus on making original movies.
Trying to interpret that IP just set me on the path to create something new.
So while he might flirt with Marvel, I doubt he would get married to them. Which brings me to my fifth, final, and definitive pick to direct the X-Men movie, and that's Greta Gerwig. Any studio in their right mind would want to be in the Greta Gerwig business. Not only did she direct the highest grossing movie of 2023, Barbie was a hit with audiences and critics alike, a movie that fired on all cylinders. As we've established, the X-Men property is dense with themes and allegory, and Gerwig's work on Barbie proved that she can tackle complex human themes through an accessible, widely appealing lens. Barbie was a visually vibrant film, and we can all agree it's time for the X-Men to embrace the colourful yellow spandex of the source material instead of turning its nose up at it. Barbie also proved that Greta is quite adept at juggling a huge ensemble cast. Even minor characters like Alan were allowed to shine through small impactful character moments, which would make her a great match for the ensemble quality of X-Men. Yeah, it's her work on Lady Bird which convinces me she'll be a great fit for the particular themes of X-Men. Lady Bird is one of the most acclaimed coming-of-age movies ever made, and the X-gene within mutants is known to manifest during puberty, so I would love for her to filter the X-Men through the lens of a coming-of-age movie. Lady Bird explored its character's relationship with faith, which is a prominent theme in X-Men, which has explored religious fundamentalism through the character of William Stryker and faith-based characters such as Nightcrawler and Dusk. When asked by Rolling Stone whether she would direct a superhero movie, Gerwig had this to say: "Yes, of course, it would have to be something I had a feeling for in a relationship to." Which doesn't suggest she's dying to direct a superhero movie, but she's certainly open if she had a great vision for it, and I think she absolutely could. Especially if she were allowed to write it herself. Now that I've given my top 5 picks, it's your turn to jump into the comments and let us know who your top choices to direct an X-Men movie will be. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave us a like and hit the subscribe button for weekly movie and TV videos. I'm Cinemike, and I'll see you next time.